Those of us on the East Coast, I'm Livia Kent. I'm the editor-in-chief of Psychotherapy Networker magazine, and I have the immense privilege of being here to chat with Leanne Campbell today. And before we get started and dive into the amazing subject matter based on an article that Leanne wrote, I want to do my due diligence and talk about Psychotherapy Networker magazine just a little bit. For 46 years, we have been the most celebrated magazine in the field. We are well read by mental health professionals all over the world, and we've won the National Magazine Award several times. Our founding editor used to say that that's like the Oscars of the magazine world, which we're very proud of, and we're really proud of our authors. Who are also mental health professionals who work really hard to make their material engaging and just fun and easy to read. So I invite everyone to subscribe to the magazine if you're willing. We will show a link at the bottom of your screen where not only can you read Leanne Campbell's latest article in this issue of the magazine for free, but we're offering a subscription deal for $12 for the entire year of Psychotherapy Networker magazines. It's quite a deal. And look, people are already saying hello from all over. Please say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And as we start this conversation, I invite everyone to just weigh in, chat with each other, chat with us, and we will find time at the end for Leanne to answer your questions. Who is Leanne? Leanne is the co-developer of many, many emotionally focused therapy educational programs and materials. And she's the co-author with our beloved Sue Johnson of a book that is called A Primer for Emotionally Focused Individual Therapy, Cultivating Growth and Fitness in Every Client. And now Leanne is a seasoned Psychotherapy Networker author as well. Welcome, Leanne.
Thank you. Privileged to be with you, Livia. Thank you so much. Great to be here. And welcome, everyone. I can see the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, let's see. California, Macedonia, Southern Africa, Delaware, Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, Birmingham in the UK. This is really exciting. Thank you, everyone, for being with us, for being part of this community. And one last plug, another way to be part of this community is to subscribe to the magazine. So let's, I will stop the sales pitch and talk a little bit about this particular issue. I do my thing where I hold it up and then people tell me that it's actually doing the mirror thing where it's backwards. So I don't know if everyone can read the title, but this issue was the July-August issue. We called it The Way We Grieve. Does time really heal all wounds? And the topic of this issue was clearly it was grief, and it was kicked off by the latest addition to the DSM of prolonged grief disorder, which our authors had various opinions about. As we were putting this issue together, it was so interesting. We felt very connected to each of the pieces in this issue that we work really hard on, and that often happens when we put out an issue. And this one in particular had a lot of personal stories from our authors. But as we were getting ready to launch it out into the world, we were thinking, it's July, summer, everyone's on break, happy, maybe at the beach. And here we are putting out this issue on grief, a really heavy issue on grief and loss. And what that's like, especially when it ends up in the therapy office. And I kind of, held my breath a little bit and thought, well, we'll see. I've never gotten so much positive feedback from an entire issue before. I mean, often we have feedback on certain articles. This issue resonated with people. And that's because grief is universal, I think. And that's because a lot of our authors told very personal stories of loss that I think, I know because they told us, really touched people's hearts. So I want to start with the topic of grief in general. It's such a universal, but such a difficult experience for clients and for therapists themselves. Leanne, what's been your experience with grief? What do you think is the most difficult aspect of working with it in the therapy room?
Great question. Well, I think, I've had personal and professional experiences of grief. I've worked a lot for many decades now in the areas of grief and loss, and walked with people through their most vulnerable moments surrounding sudden and traumatic loss, loss of a loved one, loss of a career, loss associated with trauma. Because as we work with trauma and people get in touch with what's possible, they also make contact with what has not been. And so ensues a period of grief and loss surrounding childhood or other aspects of loss, even relationship loss, or a period of loss in the relationship when couples or family members lose each other. So for me, again, the word privilege comes to mind, and it is such a privilege. But I think what can be so difficult for therapists is that when we touch loss, sometimes that brings us in contact with our own experiences, or it might bring us in contact with what is universal, what is a part of the human condition, that at some point we're all going to face our own mortality or the mortality of those we love. And especially when that is close to us, that can be difficult. And oftentimes therapists will take a break from that kind of work, which of course makes perfect sense. But connected to an emotionally focused therapy, we feel pretty comfortable with emotion. But I think the intensity of emotion that can accompany grief can often be very, very overwhelming. And even if we have not been close to grief or close to grief for some period of time, that can be a difficult endeavor for therapists and hard to maintain emotional balance while holding or walking alongside our clients in these difficult periods. I work a lot with first responders, and a common theme is that when they have to, walk to the doorsteps of those who have lost a loved one in a serious accident or some other circumstance, this is what is so, so hard. That the impact of that pain and anguish that accompanies, and especially sudden and traumatic loss. So I think for therapists as well, there's really a lot of, it's a challenge. It can be a real challenge to work with that intense emotion.
Yeah. You say in the article you work from an attachment perspective. So how does this play into your work with grief? What does working from an attachment perspective mean as you work through grief with the client?
Yeah, well, we could spend many days together talking about that, but just a few key points. One is from an attachment and EFIT point of view, we assume that we are wired for connection. Our sense of who we are, the way we move in the world, emotionally and relationally, is very connected to our most important relationships. And the other assumption connected to that is that under conditions of threat or stress, loss or trauma, then we have this hardwired psychobiological system to move toward those we love and who can support us and hold us and be there for us, be accessible, responsive, and engaged for us. And in those circumstances, when we have that loved one, our nervous systems are soothed and we can continue to grow and thrive. When that's not the case, then that proximity seeking system is activated and intense, and that's especially so in the wake of loss. So we believe that grief is an organic process that we can tap into, walk alongside, and that it makes perfect sense that after a sudden loss or even an expected loss, we have this period of proximity seeking. But it's also expected, and Mario Michelunser and Phil Shaver write about this, as well as many other attachment theorists and scientists, that in order for us to manage grief, and many of us have worked with grief or experienced it and know that people often talk about grief coming in waves. From an attachment point of view, it's a natural process that we would kind of oscillate between proximity seeking and longing and tuning into all of those emotions associated with that and taking a reprieve from that and avoiding it really. Or even, just this week, I had a client say to me, I feel guilty because I found myself smiling and laughing. But that again, I think when we can walk with our clients and understand this natural process, then we can validate and normalize a lot of those experiences. And also relevant and important from an attachment point of view is that even in the wake of loss, we can find space for our loved ones. And what do I mean by that? From an attachment point of view, we believe that when we have safe, secure, safe haven relationships, then we can call upon our loved ones from near and far, even when they're deceased. So, for example, those who are with us might even think about somebody that they have relied on, either somebody who is still in proximity or someone they may have lost. When we have that kind of close connection, we can close our eyes, tune into our bodies, feel the touch of our loved ones, even remember the presence, the felt presence. Perfume might remind us of them, whatever the case may be. And during times of need, we can still call upon those individuals. But from an attachment point of view, we can only do that once we've moved with and through this natural, organic grief process.
You describe in the article so beautifully, so vividly that process with your client Sarah. We're calling Sarah.
Yeah.
I just want to read. I shouldn't do this because then I get lost. I get lost in the reading, but I do. I just want to read this part that is just so beautiful, and then maybe you can back up a little bit afterwards and explain how we got here and what's happening in this scene, in which you've located a block, or I think what you call a stuck point in Sarah's grief process, and you're almost putting her into a trance where she goes and revisits this point where she became stuck. She works her way emotionally through those difficult emotions, and as she works through those difficult emotions, she finds that they end up shifting, and then she's able to do exactly what you just mentioned: is hold her husband. What is her husband's name? I can't remember what we called him.
Called him Steve.
Steve, yes, we've called him Steve. Hold Steve as this attachment figure, albeit one in her imagination at this point. Steve has passed on. He had a terminal illness, and he chose medical assistance in dying. So his family, including her, was with him when he went. Sarah was there supporting him, supporting their daughters. And I think what you discovered is she wasn't supporting herself through it. So that's what you're helping her with. So after you locate this stuck point, you say, in the sessions that followed, we revisited that room where he died and those pivotal moments. As we dimmed the backdrop and muted the images of others in the room, Sarah gained greater access to her inner emotional world. Her numbness shifted to vulnerability. At one point, angry and exasperated, she said, "I'm facing the biggest loss of my life, and I don't have the person I count on most to hold me." A cascade of emotions followed: sadness, anger, more anger, and finally profound sadness and deep longing. Struggling with the back and forth of letting go, but not wanting to do so, Sarah was finally able to say to Steve, "I don't want you to go." Then, suddenly tearful, she begged, "Don't leave me. I don't want you to go. I want you back." As many experiential therapists have explained, once the felt experience takes hold, felt shifts occur. and transformation becomes possible. As Sarah found and made space for more of herself, and as the details of Steve's face, his hands, and his emotional presence became clearer and more vivid, she began to access her husband in new ways as a reliably, yet imaginally secure attachment figure. With the process in full motion, I followed rather than led Sarah, simply encouraging her to let herself sob while Steve held her with his big hands and warm embrace. I stayed out of the way so that might have a powerful corrective emotional experience. Um, what a scene. So talk us, break it down for us a little bit. Tell us more about how you got there and why.
Well, thank you for your beautiful account of that, Livia. I can feel it and bring myself right back into that room again. So Sarah came to me feeling stuck. Her family felt like she should have, quote, moved on by now, which is a common theme that we hear a lot. And of course, grief has no timeline. And love, similarly, of course, does not have any expiry date. So we got to know her relationship with Steve. We got to know about her family, and all the while. So a key assumption from an EFET point of view is that when we can move with and through emotion, we can get to the other side of all kinds of things, including trauma and loss. But when there's something that gets in the way of that, it could be a previous history of trauma that is blocking this experience of loss or trauma, or it could be something connected to the relationship, or it could be some kind of external stressor. There could be all kinds of things that might get in the way of this natural propensity for us to move through emotion that we would expect and anticipate with loss, and especially the loss of a, quote, pillar of security, as attachment theorists would describe it. So I was looking for that, or perhaps for many of our clients, and this could have been the case with Sarah, they just simply need a companion in their grief, someone to walk alongside them, normalize these waves of emotion, this gut-wrenching experience of loss and the huge void that's present, or the anticipation, as Joan Didion said, that her husband's going to come back looking for his shoes, but even though in her brain she knows he's been gone, and she in fact witnessed the loss of her loved one. So as we tuned into Sarah and her felt experience of the loss of her husband of many years, many decades, in fact, it was in those final moments that she talked about being in survival mode, that she shut herself off to be there for her family, their children, and to be there for him, to support him in this, of course, difficult decision to carry through with MAID. And in so doing, she shut off her emotional experience and her natural propensity to wish to long for him and to protest this loss. And so actually, Livia, you read it so beautifully. It was just so that as we revisited that room and I stayed alongside her, because again, from an EFET attachment point of view, nobody encounters vulnerability alone. I could then help her to access her emotional experience. And once there, and with all of these protective strategies dissolved, she could access her partner as well. And prior to that, I had a good sense of him, his big hands that she described, and the warm embrace that he would provide. And then we could call him into the room. And so be it. Yes, it is so that she's struggling with the biggest loss of her life. And she didn't have her loved one, but in that moment, she was able to find him and access him, and he could hold her, and I can still feel it, actually. And, that is a corrective emotional experience. What do we mean by that? That she was able to feel what was intolerable, or she had no space to feel at the time of this key moment, this pivotal experience that shapes self and other and the way that we move in the world. and was able to move forward from that. And
it's so interesting you talk about going into that pivotal moment. I mean, it was a pivotal moment, the passing of her loved one, and you bring her back there. So instead of avoiding it, which she had been doing in a way, you helped her focus in on it, but in such a gentle, safe way. It was just really beautiful work to read about, and I'm sure to witness. Which we kind of get to do as readers. We get to sit on your shoulder a little bit and watch your therapeutic process and your therapeutic decision making, and hear exactly what you say to her, how you guide her. So it's really beautiful work. I'm just looking through the comments. A lot of people are asking if this recording will be available, and the answer is absolutely. It will stay on whatever social media stream you are tuning in from, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, wherever. So just go back after we're finished with our chat. You can watch the whole thing over again. And if you're just tuning in and don't want to go back to the beginning, we're here with Leanne Campbell, who's a co-developer of emotionally focused therapy programs and educational materials. She works closely with Sue Johnson and has written a book with Sue on emotionally focused individual therapy. And she's also done a great deal of work helping people from an EFIT perspective, from an attachment perspective, work through the very difficult experience of grief. And that's what we're talking about here today. Leanne, is there anything you'd like to leave us with before we wrap up? What should therapists know about how the EFIT process is kind of distinct in its approach to grief? And just any general messages for our mental health colleagues and community out there?
Well, I think I would say that, as therapists, I often think, going back to what I was saying earlier about first responders, they go to the door and have to announce this, tragedy or share what might have happened to a loved one. But we as therapists have the amazing privilege to not just stopping at the door, but walking into people's homes and communities and neighborhoods and worlds, and really accompanying them in their most vulnerable moments. And I think what I love about EFIT is that not only do we have a map to guide our clients through this process that's based on all kinds of research, including decades of process and outcome studies in the context of couple therapy, which of course, when we shift the relationship bond, we shift the individuals within it, but hundreds of studies in the area of attachment science that help us to maintain our balance and provide us with a map to help our clients move forward through these vulnerable moments, which really truly is a privilege. And I thank Sarah and the many others that I've had the privilege of walking alongside and working with in again, these most vulnerable moments, but these key experiences that really impact us and can shake our foundation. And again, from an attachment point of view, we would expect that. We would expect a period of destabilization and disorientation following a loss, and especially a pillar of security. And so when we can help people to find their balance on this shaky ground and then move forward back into growth and thriving and living a full life, it's amazing.
Thank you for talking with us today, sharing your story, your insights, your perspectives. If you want to read the article we've been talking about and I read from, possibly a bit too long, you can go to the link at the bottom of your screen, psychotherapynetworker.org/Campbell. You can read the article for free there. And we're also offering a deep discount to subscribe to the magazine, Psychotherapy Networker, only $12 for the year. We invite you to become a reader and part of our community, and stay connected that way to authors like Leanne, who so generously and beautifully tell their story of therapeutic healing. Thank you so much for working with us and for being here today. And thank you to everyone in the chat who's tuning in from all over the world. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Livia. Always a pleasure and an honor to be with you and to work with you and your amazing team. Thank you.